When a 34-year-old army captain overthrew Burkina Faso's president in 2022, most Western media dismissed it as just another African coup. They saw it as a localized event, a mere blip on the geopolitical radar, but they were profoundly mistaken. Because Captain Ibrahim Traore's rise didn't just shake a nation, it rattled the very foundations of global power, exposing deep fissures in the established world order. This wasn't just a change of guard, it was a defiant declaration from the heart of the Sahel, echoing across continents. Ibrahim Traore isn't your average military ruler. He emerged from the ranks, a young officer deeply embedded in the fight against jihadist insurgencies that plagued his nation. His ascent was fueled by a palpable public frustration with the previous government's perceived inability to secure the country and its continued reliance on former colonial powers. Educated, strategic, and remarkably bold, he became the world's youngest head of state. His pledge wasn't for personal power, but for the liberation of Burkina Faso from what he and many of his countrymen viewed as persistent neo-colonialism. This resonated deeply with a populace yearning for genuine sovereignty. He overthrew Lieutenant-Colonel Damiba after accusing him of cozying up to France, the former colonial master, while jihadist violence continued to spread unchecked across Burkina Faso. The perception was that Damiba's government was failing to protect its citizens and was too beholden to external interests. And here's what most mainstream media won't tell you. Traore had massive organic public support. This wasn't a coup imposed from above. It was a response to a groundswell of popular discontent. Not because he promised riches, but because he promised freedom from foreign control, from insecurity, and from the lingering shadows of colonial influence. His message struck a chord with a generation of Africans demanding true self-determination. Here's where the narrative shifts from a local event to a serious geopolitical tremor. Traoré didn't just kick out a president. He effectively kicked out France, a major European power with deep historical and economic ties to the region. This was an unprecedented act of defiance. He swiftly suspended military agreements, demanding the immediate withdrawal of French troops who had been stationed in Burkina Faso under counterterrorism mandates. This move directly challenged France's strategic presence and influence in the Sahel, a region critical for its security and economic interests, including access to vital resources like uranium from neighboring Niger. In a move that sent shivers down the spines of Western strategists, Traoré then turned to Russia. This wasn't merely a transactional shift for military hardware, it signaled a broader reorientation of Burkina Faso's foreign policy. Russia, with its no-strings-attached approach and historical anti-colonial rhetoric, offered an alternative to the conditional aid and perceived paternalism of Western partners. Suddenly, Burkina Faso wasn't just a poor African nation struggling with internal conflicts. It became a critical battleground for influence between the West and its emerging rivals, particularly Russia and China. This is why elites in Washington, Paris, and Brussels panicked. They saw not just the loss of a strategic ally, but a dangerous precedent being set for other African nations seeking to assert their sovereignty and diversify their partnerships. This isn't an isolated incident confined to Burkina Faso. From Mali to Niger, and extending to the rising influence of nations like India and China, a new world order is visibly forming, and it's decidedly not Western-led. This shift is a profound challenge to the unipolar moment that followed the Cold War. Traoré represents a wider rebellion, a growing assertion of agency from the global south. Africa rejecting French dominance, a continent-wide movement to shed the vestiges of colonialism and forge independent paths. This resonates deeply with the African diaspora, who have long advocated for true African liberation. Nations leaning toward BRICS, not NATO. The BRICS bloc, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now expanded, offers an alternative economic and political framework. It champions multilateralism, non-interference in internal affairs, and South-South cooperation, which is highly attractive to developing nations seeking equitable partnerships. For countries like India and Bangladesh, who are themselves significant players in the global south and proponents of a multipolar world, this shift is both understandable and strategically significant. And the military becoming political power brokers. In many post-colonial states, the military often sees itself as the ultimate guardian of national sovereignty and stability, stepping in when civilian governments are perceived as weak, corrupt, or compromised by foreign influence. This phenomenon, while concerning for democratic norms, is often viewed by segments of the population as a necessary, albeit temporary, measure to restore order and national pride. What Traoré did mirrors what many in the global south, especially in India and Bangladesh, have been quietly watching and in some cases actively pursuing. A strategic shift away from unquestioning U.S. dominance and toward a more multipolar global power structure. This aligns with the long-standing principles of non-alignment and strategic autonomy that have guided the foreign policies of many nations in Asia and Africa. Political analysts recognize this as a fundamental reordering of international relations, driven by economic shifts and a renewed emphasis on national sovereignty. After Traoré's coup, the geopolitical landscape of the Sahel and beyond began to transform rapidly. It wasn't an isolated incident, but a catalyst for broader regional realignments. Niger followed with its own military takeover. This was perhaps the most significant ripple, as Niger is a major uranium producer and a key strategic partner for the West in the Sahel. Its coup further eroded Western influence and deepened the crisis for France. Mali, already charting an independent course, solidified alliances outside the West. Having expelled French forces earlier, Mali continued to strengthen its ties with Russia and other non-Western partners, demonstrating a clear commitment to its new strategic direction. And Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger collectively exited ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, a huge blow to U.S.-aligned African institutions. This move created the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, a new regional bloc focused on mutual defense and economic cooperation, signaling a desire for greater regional autonomy and self-reliance. This is a domino effect that's fundamentally changing the African continent and global alliances. It's a powerful demonstration of agency from nations that have historically been on the receiving end of foreign policy. And the West, accustomed to its dominant position, is struggling to adapt, let alone stop it. This unfolding scenario presents complex challenges and opportunities for all global actors. If you're in India, Bangladesh, or even the US, you might be asking, why should I care about a coup in a distant African nation? The answer is simple. These shifts have direct, tangible impacts on your daily life and the future of global stability. Because these geopolitical realignments affect global supply chains, access to critical resources like oil and rare earths, military contracts, international trade routes, and the very fabric of foreign policy. The same multinational companies and powerful governments that shape your economy, influence your job market, and determine global prices are watching Africa's moves very closely. India is investing more in Africa, seeking new markets, resources, and strategic partnerships. This engagement is part of India's broader Look Africa policy, aiming to foster South-South cooperation and diversify its economic and strategic interests. China is building roads, railways, and ports across the continent, cementing its economic footprint and influence. Its Belt and Road Initiative is transforming infrastructure and trade flows. Russia is offering weapons, security training, and political support, often without the human rights conditionalities that accompany Western aid. This pragmatic approach appeals to regimes prioritizing stability and sovereignty. And the US? It's struggling to keep up, often perceived as reacting rather than proactively engaging, and sometimes seen as imposing its values rather than fostering genuine partnerships. This dynamic creates a vacuum that other powers are eager to fill. Captain Traoré is young, but he's sparked a wildfire of anti-colonialism, a fierce assertion of resource nationalism, and a demand for military-backed sovereignty in the face of external pressures. This movement is about reclaiming agency and charting an independent course. The question is, will this be the future of African leadership? Will more nations follow this path of assertive independence, challenging established norms and diversifying their alliances? And more importantly, will the West adapt its approach, moving beyond traditional aid models and engaging with African nations as true equals? Or will it fall further behind in this rapidly evolving geopolitical landscape? The answers will shape the 21st century. This isn't just African news, it's global power news. It's about the fundamental reordering of international relations, the rise of new poles of influence, and the assertion of sovereignty from nations long marginalized. If you want to truly understand where the world is heading, you cannot afford to ignore what's happening in Burkina Faso and across the global south. Subscribe now to stay ahead of the curve. We break down power, politics, and policy without the noise, providing the geopolitical insights and educational content you need to navigate this complex world. Join our community of informed viewers, from political analysts to engaged citizens in India, Bangladesh, the US, and the African diaspora who seek a deeper understanding of global shifts. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the forces shaping our future. And until next time, my friends, stay safe and informed.